Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. The Brexit is now upon us. Britons on Thursday voted to leave the European Union and stand alone. There were two surprises. First, that Britain would vote to leave, and second, how much impact the referendum would have on the rest of Europe and the world. First of all, the pound weakened against the dollar. Then major markets around the world began Friday in the red as investor confidence shook from news of the Brexit. While it could take as much as 2 years for the exit to be completed, European Union leaders want a quickie divorce. The only dissenting voice coming from the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who says there is no need to be particularly nasty in any way in the negotiations with Britain about its exit from the bloc. Prime Minister David Cameron did not see this coming at all, and it seems he's not the only one. Much of Britain's millennial generation is remorseful over having voted to leave. That's quite interesting because they had a lot of time to make up their minds. Joining us to understand the way forward is a Doctor of History and International Relations at the University of Lagos, Dr. David Awurawo. Plus, we'll be getting some reaction from the former president of the Nigerian Britain Association, Mr. Tunde Arogumati. We'll be right back. Reactions are mixed concerning Britain leaving the European Union. First, Prime Minister David Cameron announcing his resignation for later in the year. So also is Britain's European Commissioner Lord Hill, who oversees financial services. Then there is Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who says she will seek immediate discussions with Brussels to protect Scotland's place in the EU. Fears there could be a Brexit, even though President Francois Hollande is just as frustrated Britain voted to leave. President Barack Obama, who says nothing will change in US-Britain relations, and President Muhammadu Buhari, who regrets David Cameron's resignation but supports Britain's exit of the European Union, which he says was a demonstration of courage by a democratic leader who respects the will of the people, even if he did not agree with their decision. Let's bring it into perspective now. The exit may not be immediate, but what could happen in the next few weeks?
That's the question. What will happen to Britain over the next few weeks and months as it begins its transition into single nationhood? To answer that, let's take into consideration what British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said about the British market. It will be catastrophic for Britain to lose access to the European single market following the referendum. Speaking on a news program in the UK, he said there was no imperative to serve the Article 50 notice, which is the formal process of leaving at any particular time.
The negotiation will not start until the Article 50 notice has been served, and as the Prime Minister's made clear, that will be a decision for the next Prime Minister after the transition has happened.
Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union establishes the procedure for a member state to withdraw from the EU. It requires the member state to notify the EU of its withdrawal, and it obliges the EU to then try to negotiate a withdrawal agreement with that state. Thursday's referendum in Britain, in which it voted leave, does not represent that formal notification, but it should take place within the week when EU member countries meet for a summit either around the 28th or the 29th. Once Britain invokes Article 50, it will have a 2-year window in which to negotiate a new treaty to replace the terms of EU membership. Britain and the EU will need to sit and work out issues such as trade tariffs, migration, and the regulation of everything from cars to agriculture. At most, Britain could negotiate access to the European market. That isn't much different from what it is now. France, however, says its bilateral immigration treaties with Britain will not be affected by the Brexit. French government spokesman Stéphane Le Foll says the Brexit will not lead to changes in terms of immigration treaties with the United Kingdom, who were not part of the Schengen zone. One of such bilateral treaties signed in 2003 allows British officials to check passport on French soil and vice versa. It effectively put the border with Britain on French soil, so that migrants trying to reach British shores congregated in camps at Calais on the French coast. But there could be trouble up ahead, as the UK itself could break apart as Scotland considers a new vote on independence. The EU, on the other hand, would most likely be economically and politically damaged as it faces the departure of not only its most free market proponent, but a member of the UN Security Council veto and powerful army. The bloc could lose 1/6 of its economic output at once. There is also the question of what happens to millions of Britons living and working in other parts of the EU, as well as EU citizens living and working in Britain.
Joining us now is the former president of the Nigerian Britain Association, Mr. Tunde Rogomati. He is in London. Mr. Rogomati, thank you for joining us on the program. Did you think that Britain would ever be at this point in history?
It wasn't anywhere in the foreseeable future that Britain would go ahead and, on a large scale vote to go out of something that they obviously were not sure about to the extent that they have gotten themselves in a tight corner, so it would seem. Well, having said that, it has already happened. And I think, interestingly enough, because of the robustness of the democracy out here and also the structures, you can see that they've started to, in our own parlance, bounce back. There has been a drive by a number of people that they need a second referendum. The Scottish Parliament says they are going to use all powers within their reach to ensure that it doesn't go through in Parliament, and they say they have the right to do that. And even there have been suggestions that Parliament should Parliament out here in Westminster should try to stop what do you call it? Try to stop it being formally enforced. Yeah.
Is it possible for them to stop a Brexit at this point?
Well, technically it is possible, but how they're going to go about it is the problem. First and foremost, quite a number of those who actually voted to leave are also complaining that it is not democratic to want to go against the wish of the people, and that they would like their wishes to be enforced.
There are a few millennials who are regretting their choice in the referendum. What does this say about the education received on the referendum?
A lot of the people, the common people, or the masses as we call them in our country, do not understand what the EU is all about. They don't understand what the union is about. They don't understand what it stands for. They don't understand and of course the politicians have, to their own advantage, not gone along to enlighten them enough to understand. And of course, because of that, they have been able to, bamboozle them here and there. This is why some people are really annoyed. A lot of people, they knew what it would entail and why. For instance, look at Farage. Mr. Farage comes out again to say that he had said earlier that, once we exit, we're going to have 350 million pounds or something per week or something to go into the NHS. And you know that the British love their system. This is a very fantastic system that gives a lot of support to the people. It has come out that what was he didn't even know what he was saying, or he has come to actually refute that statement.
Was the Brexit a bad idea?
Not necessarily, actually, because come to think of it, I think it's the beginning of them probably having to revert to reality, the beginning of them having to understand that you cannot live in isolation and should probably step off your high horse, and probably you don't need people like, and thank God he's resigned from my point of view, because you don't need people like Mr. Cameron who come off and talk above the heads of people and talk down on them. You need to sit down and get real and be a bit humble before you are humiliated, as has happened. And also, there's an area that I think might favor countries like Nigeria and others. The Commonwealth, for instance, the Commonwealth, in terms of trade, in terms of so many areas of bilateral relations or collaboration, has suffered, and has because the EU has precluded. It's either you have allegiance to the EU or whatever. And if you're a member of the EU, UK's being a member of the EU actually really did not allow it to constitute the Commonwealth, which of 54 countries, which Nigeria is part of, a network which, if activated properly, would actually be another area of trade, another area of growth, another area of very serious international enterprise.
Thank you again for joining us, Mr. Rogomati. When we come back after the break, we'll be looking in the past for answers to the future of the Brexit.